Namaste, namaste. It was just a beautiful blue. I think it's a type of a kingfisher bird. There are some birds that are just so neon blue. And this, oh, he just stopped, but you'll hear, if you can hear that chirping. It's this little squirrel over here. Not this one, but another one. And whenever he chirps or she chirps, the tail pops up. And in the darkroom, my sleep schedule got to like the opposite. So I would sleep during the day and I would be awake from around 7 p.m. until around 11 a.m. I didn't use a clock, but you can hear all the different animals and things. And so these creatures, they would just be chirping and chirping and chirping. So funny. I re-listened to a few of the videos, and it's been quite a while since I have spoken this much, let alone strung together thought this long, anywhere near this long. Over these several months in the darkroom, I would say I imagine around 2 hours maybe of intentional conscious thought. The rest of the time, the mind is still thinking. It's been trained to just keep thinking and thinking and thinking, but I would just be releasing it, releasing it, releasing it. So sometimes it might be fractions of a second the thought comes up and I see it. Sometimes there's space even for minutes and tens of minutes later as the meditation got deeper. Sometimes it's minutes of thinking before I realize it, and then I'm releasing it. But for actual periods of let me sit here and think about this thing, I wasn't doing that in this retreat. And so it's been quite a while since I have done that. So thank you for your grace as I hear some things that maybe I misspoke on or didn't say fully. One, when I was speaking about the Greco-Roman portraitures and images of the Buddha with the curly hair, what I meant to say is I believe those came about around 500 to 700 years after he passed, not 500, 700 years ago. And another, as I was sharing about the governments who built all of these caves for people to do these positive things, imagine that. But yes, true. But in my opinion, what's more important is taking personal responsibility that I, or we, are the ones who create these governments. We're the ones who are the actual government employees and the politicians and the ones who elect them, and we're the ones who create the society that has these values that allows these sorts of people to rise to the top. Go to different countries or different tribes or different places, different people or different cultures have different values, and so you don't see the same type of politician everywhere. They come from the place itself. Society is just a bunch of group of people. It's just us. And so we can provide politicians that have our values if we actually go about living the life of the values that we say we care about. But if I say that I really care about humanity and helping others and being helped, because it's nice to not have to do it on my own, then I just don't support things, even if it's movies or music or games that are about violence and harming people, you know. And this is, we're so disconnected because, for different reasons. But like a very easy example is President Trump. He was elected, and there were very many people who were upset that he was elected. But I would be very curious to know how many of those people that were upset once he was elected, or even before he was elected, how many of those people had watched The Apprentice? Because we know now that his taxes were finally released. We know that he's nowhere near a billionaire. He was right on the verge of bankruptcy for whatever it is, the fourth or the fifth time or something, before they came to him about The Apprentice. And subsequently, with the money he made from The Apprentice, he regained solvency, and then he was able to fund his presidential campaign and subsequently win the election. And so that's just a very clear example of, in the places that I have been, it's commonly said, "Oh, well, this is just comedy. You know, it's just comedy." What's the Apprentice about? I've never watched it fully, but I believe I've seen it. It's like making fun of people while focusing on money. And so, like, we say, well, that's just comedy. It's not real life. It just makes me laugh. I just want something to, you know, blow off steam. Well, okay, but obviously those aren't the values of someone that I want to be leading the country that impacts me and so many other people around the world, like someone who makes fun of people and is focused on money. And we saw that very clearly once he became president. I mean, he's making fun of, now instead of people, he's making fun of countries, and he's doing all kinds of things focused on money. It's not really surprising that, and we say it's comedy, it doesn't really matter, but the result is, even if it wasn't the energetic result, the result is focusing on that comedy gives him the money to subsequently be a president that harms so many people around the world. So I currently feel, that's why as I said, I think it's more important for me to focus on myself, because it's easy to say, well, let me save the rainforest, or let me fight global warming, or let me, you know, fight racism, or whatever these sorts of things are. But one, the energy of fighting, it just persists. That which you resist persists. If I'm fighting it, it can't be gone, because for me to be able to fight it, it has to be here. So to me, to fight cancer has to exist, and so in some way it perpetuates it. But even if that principle didn't exist, which it does, even if that didn't exist, if I'm going into trying to save the rainforest, but I'm doing it from this place of like anger and whatnot, so I'm doing it as happened in the past, where I'm actually like attacking the logging companies and, you know, harming people, or just yelling and that sort of thing, well, then that's just perpetuating some other type of negativity. I'm not saying we need to all be perfect before we can ever go and help other people. Let's do both. But I'm interested in becoming more and more positive and healthy in my own life, so that when I do go out to assist others, the results are much higher and the negative ripple effects are much smaller. Now then, getting back to where we were. So I had just shared about connecting with Goenkaji and those meditations. Now, as I began more actively on this path, as I said, at the end of 2017 after the MBA, and slowly over time, I was on this path. I imagine we're all on this path since we're born, or maybe even before. It's just that I was not as aware of it, and I had a lot more unhealthy things that were limiting me. But as I began more actively and intentionally on it at that time, slowly, as I was doing more of these things that were purifying the mind, I was reconnecting more with myself, and my confidence was increasing. And that's a concept that has changed a lot for me as I've been on this journey, the idea of confidence. In the past, I used to think that confidence comes from external things or from doing things. Like, I need to do some deals and then I'll be confident. I need to win some games and then I'll get my confidence back. What I found, and what I've been told and learned from experience, is I do my best and the results are out of my hands. The results I can't control. Maybe I win the game, maybe I break my leg and I lose, maybe there's a tornado, the game is canceled, maybe the other team is just better. Like, that's out of my control. So if I'm focused on results in order to give me confidence, then it's going to be pretty fickle. But if I instead am getting to know myself better, meaning I know I have much more sensitivity, much more clarity, much more awareness of how I feel in the holistic sense when I do something. If I act in this way, this feels positive, this feels healthy, this feels happy. If I act in this way, this feels harmful. Then I have much more clarity as I'm in these innumerable different situations throughout life, of, should I go this way? Should I go this way? Should I do what these people are saying? Should I do what these people are saying? Should I do this other thing that no one's saying, but it feels the most healthy to me? I have much more confidence in that. And so I'm not as concerned whether everyone is doing the same thing I'm doing, no one's doing the same thing I'm doing, some people are doing the same things I'm doing. It matters less and less because I'm not as worried about if it's the right way or not. I know much more. And so as I have been doing this over these years, and it's coming, like I said, this was an unexpected benefit. I went into this mostly to be rid of sexual addiction. I mean, alcohol, thankfully, that went away really quickly. But the sexual addiction and just like the depression and stuff like that. And then after I began doing this stuff, then I'm getting all these other results. And I'm like, this is pretty nice. I didn't realize this one's coming. And so over these past years, as I have been doing it, these values have been shifting. And so I've been coming more and more to this place, especially in the last several years, really since India. I mean, India is such a transformative place. It's just such an incredible place. And for me, there's so much, I don't know, I just connect with it in this really deep, for spirituality and evolution and depth, and just, I find it incredible. On the surface, as I said, in many places that we're in the world right now, I mean, there's so much ignorance and harm and whatnot. And this is everywhere. It just looks in different ways. I'm not saying that India is the only place, but then there's this other thing as well. And it just, when I was here last, it's fully unexpected. Actually, when I first came to India, I specifically said I'm not going to do any spiritual things. I'm only going to focus on volunteering for some months to get that benefit, or to get that experience that I've heard will be beneficial. And then I'm going to go back to business, but I'll have it from this more service-oriented, and I've got it all planned out. I will not focus on any sort of spirituality because that's so cliche, because everyone does it and says that, and like, I'm too cool for that. And thankfully, after a few months when COVID began, I started letting go of those stories and instead opened myself up, and such massive shifts. And so lots of things changed, and I continued to be going deeper with this. And so it has felt over these years that I will be taking more and more separation from society and dedicating more and more time to these practices, because at least right now I feel like, yeah, I can speak and share things, but I'm coming still. I might have more experience than many people on this, but that doesn't qualify me, in my opinion, to actually speak on this and be taken as any sort of an authority or anything like that. In my opinion, if we had societies that were really set up for like long-term benefit, and someone like me, I just wouldn't be speaking besides to my peers as we share, and yeah, I did this, I did that, okay, I got these results, I got that, but not speaking somewhere like on YouTube where there's the potential for many people to see me and think that I am some authority, because there's lots of harm that can come from someone speaking from a place where, like, as I said, if I were to speak about darkrooms from 2 years ago, I still would have had way more experience than most anyone in the world. Obviously, there's many people who have more experience than me, but the majority of the world has no experience. And so I would have had all this experience, I could have spoken on it. And a lot of that information that I shared, I would change now. But that would have been 2 years of that information being out in the world, can't be taken back, and other people would have taken it, and it's impacting them in different ways. And so, yeah, anywho's, that's where I've been at. And so I've been feeling it's time to go deeper, so that when it is appropriate for me to share, I'm at a place, or when I'm at a place where it becomes appropriate for me to share. So my intention was, I've gotten this benefit from the Buddha Dhamma, and it's been changing my life in these ways. I'd like to go deeper with that. I don't know much about it at all because I wasn't reading the suttas or reading any of the like deeper focuses on the Buddha's teachings. The suttas is a Pali word. Pali is the language from around that time. The Sanskrit would be sutra. And so I wasn't doing any of that. I happened to come upon a book written by Daniel Ingram, and that was really the only resource that I had had. Before that, in India, I had connected with some other meditators and things, and they had more experience than me, and in different places like Thailand where there's more of this practice. And so they had shared that, yeah, there's actually what we call awakened or enlightened people. These people do exist. These words before, they didn't mean anything to me, and it seemed very theoretical. But he said, yes, there are people who have taken these practices to this place to where they just don't react negatively. Their actions are just positive. It doesn't mean that they're perfect, again, in that the results are always just look like the streets are paved with gold. But where they are coming from, they're doing things that aren't based out of craving and aversion. They're not experiencing suffering. And I was like, wow, okay, that's pretty incredible. I didn't know that even really exists. I thought that's just something from the past. We hear of these people like Jesus or Buddha, but that's pretty amazing. And then I came across this book written by Daniel Ingram, and that's the only resource I had. And he's talking about a specific type of practice, meditation, that was said to have been from the Buddha, that is taught in Myanmar. And I said, okay, well, sweet. Like, I didn't really do much research on it. And as I was looking at this later, I was like, this is an area I could have gone about things a little differently, because meditation is a very important thing in life and very important decision to make, even if it might not seem like it, especially if I'm at a place where I'm doing 5 or 20 minutes a day. But as I said, even 5 or 20 minutes a day is providing some training. It might not be 24-hour basketball dribbling, but it's providing some sort of change in my brain. And these tools of meditation are created, especially the ones that have been around for thousands of years. These have been tried and true to change the mind in some way. Like, they have been tweaked. If I go to someone, there are many different ways to learn a language, but there are certain ways that have been studied and refined and tweaked to where I'm going to learn that language 2, 4, 5, 10 times faster than if I were just opening up a book and trying to do it. And it's the same with meditation. Yeah, I can try to train my mind, or I can do some of these newer types of meditation, which have good ideas, but they haven't really been refined over thousands of years and millions of people. Or I can use one of those, and it's going to change my mind faster. And like I said, there are benefits, but there are also real dangers in meditation, or in doing anything that affects the mind, which is everything. And so I didn't really research this meditation that I read about. It seemed good. I started practicing it. The theory seemed good, and I decided, okay, I'm going to go to Myanmar, to Burma, around last autumn. I will go there, and I will do at least a 3-month retreat there, and I will give this a trial, probably do at least a year trial of just this as the practice, and that will be it. And I was pretty much set up, and I did that based off of one resource, one resource who I have I have respect for Daniel Ingram. To me, he seems very clearly sincere. He has dedicated lots of his life to the practice and also to sharing with others. And now he's taking lots of his time and energy to share information about the dangers that can come from doing certain types of meditation, or doing it in ways that don't have appropriate guidance and things. And I have appreciation for him, because he, ironically enough, led me to the practice that I'm doing now, which is very different from the one that I was intending to do in Myanmar. So I had downloaded some podcasts of his, or interviews with him, and one of them was an interview, it was a discussion between he and another meditator named Delson Armstrong, and I'll provide some contact information. and from this Guru Viking podcast. And like I said, I haven't listened to podcasts in a while, but much love and appreciation to the Guru Viking man, because without that I may not have connected with this. I had actually connected with this TWIM 2 years prior. A young friend told me about it, but I said no, I'm focusing on Goenka, and then I kind of forgot about it since. But this interview, subsequently I heard Daniel Ingram and Delson discussing their own experiences and their own very different types of practices. And I thought, wow, I really am resonating with the energy and the experience that Delson's sharing, and also with the practice that he's talking about. So subsequently that same day, I emailed the retreat, the meditation community where he teaches, and they replied the same day and said, yeah, actually we've got a retreat coming up in like a week and someone just canceled, so come on over. And I said, sweet. And that is something that I've only begun really being more intentional about a handful or so years ago, after I had some limited interactions with people who are really at high levels of whatever they do, some sorts of like mastery, or at least much higher level than the majority, to where I experienced what a difference it is just being in the presence of someone who has been doing something so long that it's very refined. And sure, I can learn from them as they're teaching, but to just see how they move and interact, doesn't matter. I mean, there's such a massive difference, let's say, from a regular carpenter and a master woodworker. And just to see the way that the master woodworker holds his tools and visualizes what he's going to create and sets up his workshop and communicates with his assistants, just to see these things, let alone to have him teach me about how to make a cabinet, it's going to be much more beneficial and valuable to see how this person, who is the example of the direction I'm interested in going. And so I have been doing that a little bit. Now, I don't know really of that many people who are masters in the world. And so if you do, I would really appreciate, really for anything. I'm interested, like I said, in just being around these people. So if you know of people who are at that very high level, please do share. I would love to hear. But it seemed like Delson was, so I reached out. I was able to connect with him, subsequently went to the retreat, and subsequently really resonated with the practice. And so plans shifted, decided not to go to Myanmar, decided to come to India to continue and attend 4 more TWIM retreats here. And then after that decided, yeah, I would really like to give this full focus and go deep. And I experienced so much benefit from the Darkroom previously, where I didn't even have a real practice. I just had some modern kind of teachings that I had tossed together to the best of my ability. But just being in darkness for even days, I mean, I've been in for all different lengths, but just being in for those months, I had permanent transformation, at least so far. It's only been 2.5 years. So let's combine that with this practice and let's really give it a test. That's what I did. So I will share about TWIM now.